Hi, in this video we're going to talk about the management of Junos configuration. What do I mean by management of Junos configuration? Well, I basically mean how can we actually view the configuration of the device when we are both in operational and configuration mode. This is very useful because as we're doing configuration of the device, it will help you see your changes actually are being done, what changes are actually being done on the candidate configuration before you actually commit it to the device. So it's very useful to see, and also when you're in a production environment and you want to see a particular piece of the configuration, you can actually just focus on that particular piece instead of actually having to see the entire configuration of the device, which as we know in production might be quite long. So very easy way or best way to see this is to actually see it on a device. So let's go to a router and see it there. So here we are. This router has little configuration. Let's see what it has. So we do show configuration, and we can see here that besides the configuration, we also get a couple of good pieces of information, such as when was the last time the device was configured and by whom. We can also see the version of the device. We could get the same information doing show version, which is nice to have. Especially if you have this information as a backup, you can see in what version that device was. We can also see the configuration on the Juniper device. It's in levels. We can see the system here, we can see the root authentication on their system. We can also see the lab user on their login on their system. We can see services, we can see the syslog configuration, and we can see our management interface here. So that's the most basic way of actually seeing the configuration, and we can see it when we are actually on configuration mode. So let's see that. So here I'm in configuration mode. Let's say that I want to go to system services. So let's choose edit system services. So now I'm in system services. So let's say that I only want to see what I have configured under that level. So I can do show. When I do show, I can see the only thing under system services in this router is telnet. So basically it means that I have telnet enabled and nothing else. So if you log into this device and you want to enable some more services, you can just go set, let's say finger, an FTP, and SSH. Now if you show again, you can see all 4 services enabled there. So it's a very neat way, it's a very easy way of actually seeing what you are configuring. Especially again if you're in production, because here in a lab environment, devices typically have very little configuration or very specific configuration for whatever sample we are working on. Another interesting thing that I do a lot, and I quite like it, is the fact that you can compare your candidate configuration with your active configuration, so you can actually see what will change when you do a commit. So for example, you have seen that we have enabled 3 different services here. So we do show pipe compare, and it will show us that under system services, we are in this configuration, we are adding finger, we are adding FTP, and we are adding SSH. So it means that when I do commit, we will enable those 3 services. Also, show compare is very flexible in the sense that besides, if you don't put anything, if you just put compare, it compares the last configuration, which in our case is the active one. But you can compare it if you do context-sensitive help. You can compare with either a file you have stored there, perhaps let's say a backup, or you can compare with the rollback files, which as we all know are the files that the system creates as you are doing configuration. So they're your own internal backups. So for example, if I do rollback here, and I have quite a few, let's say I'm going to pick up, I don't know, let's pick a few random ones and let's compare so we can see what's the difference between our candidate configuration and those rollbacks. So for example, if we do rollback 10, the system is telling us there's no other difference other than we have the 3 services enabled in our candidate config. Let's pick another number. Maybe we get lucky and we see more. This one looks the same. Pretty much look the same, all look the same, but the point is exactly the same. You would see whatever changes you have different there, so it's an interesting thing to do. For example, I do a lot show compare before doing any commit, so I can actually see that I'm going to commit the changes that I only want to commit and not committing anything else that I might have overlooked. So it's very interesting. And it's a feature you can actually do outside configuration mode as well. You can do it from the configure, you can do it from the operational mode, and it works in the same way. So let's do commit here, and after it commits, we'll go to operational mode and we can look at it there. So if we look at it from here, if we do show configuration, another interesting thing is that, again, in operational mode, you can also look at specific part of the config. You don't need to look at the entire thing. If I do show configuration, nothing else, I will see the entire thing. But let's say you want to focus on, for example, the interfaces. You can focus on the interfaces, and it will only show you that part of that section of the configuration, which again for a production environment it's very nice. So, but let's go back to the compare. So if I do show configuration and I do tab, I can do compare again, same thing. I can compare it to a file I have stored on the router, or I could compare it to one of the rollbacks, which again is its backup configuration. So if I compare it to rollback number 1, which is the change we just did, we're going to see that it's telling us your config has finger FTP SSH. So it's very interesting and very easy, and you can actually see it's the same info. Let's say that you didn't actually enable those services, so you don't know what changed from the last couple of versions to the one that's running on the device. So it's one way you can actually see how that configuration evolved. So you can see in the last 5 changes into the device what happened, who changed them, and basically why. So it's a very interesting and very powerful feature. So to summarize a little bit, we saw how we could actually see what the device actually is configured, and we could see how to see what changes we had on the backups, and to understand them better.